The Watcher in the Walls. Nora Halstrom had opened the door 17 years ago. That was the secret she'd buried so deep, she'd almost convinced herself it was a dream. At 13 years old, standing in her childhood bedroom in Briarwood, she'd heard her name called from the hallway. She'd unlocked the door. She'd turned the handle. And when she'd seen nothing but empty darkness on the other side, something cold and wet had brushed past her shoulder and slipped inside. She'd invited it in. And now, at 30 years old, standing in room 4 of the Seaside Manor Lodge, with bloody footprints leading from her bathroom to her bed, Nora finally understood what that meant. It had never been stalking her. It had been living inside her, and tonight it wanted out. Before we begin, I want to thank every soul that keeps returning to listen. You've turned whispers into echoes. If you haven't already, subscribe and stay close, because what you're about to hear is one story you won't forget. The realization hit her like ice water in her veins. Nora backed against the wall, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she stared at the footprints. They were too large to be hers. The toes splayed at unnatural angles, and they glistened wet and dark in the dim light of her bedside lamp. She'd been alone in this room for hours. The door was locked from the inside. The windows overlooked a 40-foot drop to jagged rocks and crashing waves below. No one could have gotten in, unless they were already here. Nora's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone from the nightstand. No signal. She'd noticed that when she checked in, but Constance, the severe-looking manager with silver hair pulled tight against her skull, had assured her the lodge phone in the lobby worked fine. Nora hadn't cared then. She'd wanted isolation. She'd wanted to be somewhere so remote that maybe, finally, the thing following her would lose her trail. How stupid she'd been. She moved toward the door, keeping her eyes on the bathroom where the footprints originated. The door stood half open, and she could see the edge of the mirror above the sink. It was fogged over as if someone had just taken a scalding shower, even though Nora hadn't used the bathroom since before bed. She'd been too afraid to close her eyes, so she'd forced herself to stay awake, reading, until exhaustion dragged her under around midnight. 3 hours. She'd slept for 3 hours, and something had been in here with her. Nora reached for the doorknob to her room. It wouldn't turn. She twisted harder, yanking with both hands, but the brass handle remained frozen in place. The lock wasn't engaged. The mechanism simply refused to move, as if the door had been welded shut from the outside. "No, no, no," she whispered, pulling until her palms burned. She pounded on the wood, shouting for help, but her voice seemed to die in the air, swallowed by the heavy silence that pressed against her eardrums. A sound came from the bathroom, wet, dragging, like something heavy being pulled across tile. Nora spun around, pressing her back against the door. The bathroom light flickered once, twice, then blazed bright enough to hurt her eyes. Through the open doorway she saw the mirror. The fog had been wiped away in a circular pattern, and in the center, written in what looked like condensed steam but moved like it was alive, were 2 words that dripped down the glass. "Come here." Nora's throat closed. She shook her head, even though no one was there to see her refuse. The letters on the mirror began to run, streaking down like tears, and then reformed into new words. "You invited me." The memory crashed through her defenses. Briarwood. her bedroom with the flowered wallpaper and the window that looked out on the dark mass of trees. She'd been reading in bed when she heard it. Her name, clear and distinct, Nora. Just like that. She'd thought it was her mother checking on her, even though something felt wrong about the voice. Too flat, too empty of warmth. She'd gotten out of bed in her pajamas, her feet cold on the hardwood floor. She'd walked to the door. Her hand had reached for the lock. She'd turned it, pulled the door open. The hallway had been empty and dark. Her parents' bedroom door was closed. No one was there, but something had moved past her. She'd felt it, a presence that carried cold with it, that smelled like wet earth and copper. It had brushed against her shoulder as it entered her room, and she'd spun around to see nothing but her empty bedroom behind her. She'd climbed back into bed, telling herself she'd imagined it, but then she'd felt the breath on the back of her neck, warm and moist. And she'd heard the whisper directly in her ear, words in a language she didn't understand, but that burned themselves into her brain anyway. She'd screamed. Her parents had come running. They'd found her alone, crying about nightmares. They'd stayed with her until she fell asleep, and in the morning they'd dismissed it as childhood fears. But Nora had known. Even at 13, she'd known something had changed that night. She'd felt heavier afterward, like she was carrying extra weight no one else could see. And everywhere she went after that, strange things followed. The bathroom light in the lodge room flickered again, pulling Nora back to the present. The dragging sound came again, louder this time, and she saw movement in the mirror's reflection. Something was in the bathtub behind the shower curtain. The plastic hung still, but she could see the outline of something tall and wrong pressing against it from the other side. The curtain ring scraped along the rod as whatever was behind it began to pull the curtain aside. Nora grabbed the desk chair and wedged it under the doorknob of her room door. Even though the handle wouldn't turn anyway, she needed a weapon. Anything. Her eyes darted around the room and landed on the desk lamp. She yanked the cord from the wall and hefted it in her hands. The base was heavy ceramic. It would have to do. The shower curtain continued its slow reveal. First, she saw fingers, long and pale, the nails black and cracked. Then a hand. Then an arm that bent at too many joints. The thing stepped out of the tub with a wet squelch, and Nora got her first full look at it. It was tall enough that it had to hunch to fit under the bathroom ceiling. Its skin looked waterlogged and gray, hanging loose in places like it didn't quite fit over the bones underneath. But the worst part was the face. It wore Nora's face. Not exactly. The features were stretched and distorted, the eyes too large and completely black. The mouth pulled into a grin that showed teeth filed to points. Strips of what looked like her own skin hung from its cheeks, like it had tried to wear her face as a mask, but hadn't done a very good job. When it spoke, it used her voice. "Do you remember the words I taught you, Nora?" She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The lamp shook in her grip. The creature took a step forward, its movements jerky and insect-like. Its neck made a cracking sound as it tilted its head, studying her. "That night in Briarwood, I whispered them in your ear, the binding words. You were too young to understand, but your mind kept them safe for me. I've been waiting so patiently for you to be ready. 17 years, Nora. 17 years of living in your shadow, feeding on your fear, growing stronger every time you ran from me. What are you?" Nora's voice came out as a broken whisper. The thing's grin widened impossibly. "I'm what happens when you open the wrong door. I'm what you invited in. And now I'm strong enough to take what I really want." It lunged. Nora swung the lamp with everything she had. The ceramic base connected with the creature's head, and instead of blood, thick black liquid sprayed across the wall. The thing shrieked, a sound that vibrated in Nora's bones and shattered the window behind her. Cold ocean wind rushed into the room, bringing the smell of salt and decay. The creature stumbled back, that black substance pouring from the wound in its skull, but it was already recovering. The gash sealed itself with a wet sound, and when it looked at her again, its Nora face had split down the middle, revealing something else underneath. Something with too many eyes and a mouth that opened vertically instead of horizontally. "I've tasted your dreams, Nora. I've drunk your nightmares. I know everything you fear, everything you love, everyone you've ever cared about. Your friend Jess from the camping trip, your college roommate Sarah, your parents in Briarwood. I could visit them all. Would you like that?" "Stay away from them," Nora screamed. She backed toward the shattered window, glass crunching under her bare feet. Blood welled up from the cuts, leaving her own footprints to mix with the ones already on the floor. "Then give me what I want," the creature said, its voice dropping lower, multiple voices layering over each other. "Let me finish what we started. Let me wear you properly." It rushed forward again, and this time Nora didn't swing the lamp. She threw herself sideways, rolling across the bed as the creature crashed into the wall where she'd been standing. It whirled around with impossible speed, and Nora saw her chance. The door. The chair had fallen when the window shattered. She grabbed the doorknob and twisted. It turned. Nora threw herself into the hallway and slammed the door behind her. She heard the creature hit it from the other side, the wood bowing but holding. She ran. The hallway stretched before her, longer than it should be, doors lining both sides, room numbers that made no sense. 14, 23, 7, 41, none of them in order. Behind her, her room door exploded outward in a shower of splinters. Nora ran faster, her cut feet leaving bloody prints on the old floorboards. She could hear it behind her, could hear the wet slap of its movement and the creaking of wood as it crawled along the walls and ceiling. She didn't dare look back. She saw a staircase ahead and threw herself toward it, taking the steps 3 at a time. The creature's shriek echoed through the building, and Nora heard other doors beginning to open. She caught glimpses of other guests in the rooms she passed, people standing motionless in doorways, all of them wearing expressions that didn't quite fit their faces, all of them watching her run with the same empty black eyes. The lodge wasn't empty. It had never been empty. Nora hit the ground floor and burst through the first door she found. The kitchen. Moonlight streamed through the windows, illuminating industrial appliances and a long counter. On the far wall hung a rack of knives, cleavers, butcher's tools. She grabbed the largest knife, a 10-inch chef's blade, and spun around, just as the creature poured through the doorway. Not walked, poured. Its body had lost all pretense of human shape, flowing like liquid shadow, with her distorted face floating in the center of the mass. You can't kill me, Nora. I'm not alive. I'm the space between thoughts, the shadow behind consciousness. I'm the thing that waits in every dark corner of every mind. Killing this form won't save you. I'll just retreat back inside and wait for another opportunity, another 17 years, if I have to. Nora's mind raced. The words, the binding words it had mentioned. She could feel them scratching at the back of her consciousness. Syllables in a language that predated human speech. It had put them there when she was 13. Why? You needed me to remember them, she said suddenly. That's why you waited. That's why you've been following me. You can't leave without those words, can you? You're trapped. The creature's mass roiled and churned. Clever girl. Yes, the words bind me to you, but they also bind you to me. Speak them, and I go free. But without them, I stay inside you forever, growing, feeding, until there's nothing left of Nora Halstrom but me wearing her skin. Then I'll never speak them, Nora said. I'll die first. I'll take you with me. The kitchen had a back door. Through the window, she could see the cliff edge just beyond the building, the 40-foot drop, the rocks, the churning black water. The creature seemed to sense her intention. If you die, I die. You'd do that? You'd kill yourself to be rid of me? I've been dead since I was 13, Nora said. I just didn't know it yet. She ran for the door. The creature flowed after her faster than before, and she felt something cold wrap around her ankle. She crashed to the floor, the knife skittering away across the tiles. The thing's mass began to envelop her legs, spreading up her body like ice water, and Nora felt her consciousness being pushed aside. It was trying to take her over, to crawl inside her skin properly this time. Her hand closed around a shard of the broken window glass on the floor. She didn't think. She just moved. She drove the glass into her forearm, dragging it deep, and blood poured out in a hot rush. The creature recoiled instantly, its mass pulling back. Iron and salt in human blood, Nora gasped. My roommate Sarah used to read books about this stuff, about things like you. She told me once, and I thought she was crazy. She didn't know if it was true, but the creature was definitely avoiding her blood now. She dragged herself to her feet, cradling her bleeding arm, and grabbed the knife with her good hand. The words were rising in her mind now, unbidden. The binding words. She could feel them, trying to force themselves out of her throat. She stumbled toward the back door and crashed through it into the night. The wind hit her like a wall, carrying spray from the waves below. The cliff edge was 10 feet away. The creature poured through the door behind her, reforming into something with legs and arms, and her face split into a dozen screaming mouths. Speak the words, it demanded, in a voice like grinding stone. Speak them, or I'll make you watch while I visit everyone you've ever loved. I'll wear their faces. I'll make them beg for death in your voice. Nora's feet carried her backward toward the edge. She could hear the ocean crashing against rocks below. The words were pushing up her throat now, trying to escape. She couldn't hold them back much longer, unless... You want the words? She said. Come closer. I'll whisper them. The creature hesitated, its many mouths curling into matching grins. It flowed forward, and when it was close enough, Nora grabbed it with her bleeding arm. The creature shrieked as her blood touched its mass, but she held on, and she spoke the words. Not in a whisper. She screamed them, The syllables tore themselves from her throat, and she felt something fundamental rip loose inside her chest. The creature began to dissolve, its mass evaporating like steam, its screams mixing with Nora's voice as the binding broke. But Nora was already falling. The cliff edge crumbled beneath her feet. As the last of her strength gave out, the world flipped, sky and sea trading places, and she saw the lodge above her, every window blazing with light. In every window stood a figure, Constance in one, the other guests in others, all of them watching, all of them smiling the same smile. The water hit her like concrete. Nora woke up in room 4. Morning light filled the space. Her arm was unbandaged and smooth, no cut, no scar. Her feet were clean and whole. She sat up slowly, her body aching in places that had no visible injuries, and looked around the room. Everything was exactly as it had been when she checked in. Her suitcase unpacked, her laptop on the desk, the bathroom door closed and innocent. On the nightstand beside her bed sat a glass of water and a handwritten note in elegant script. "Congratulations on completing your stay, Nora. The binding is broken. You're free to go. But should you ever wish to return, your room will be waiting. Some guests find they prefer the lodge to the alternative." Nora stood on shaking legs and walked to the mirror above the dresser. Her reflection looked back at her. Normal. Whole. She was definitely her. She could feel it. The weight she'd carried for 17 years was gone. The thing that had lived in her shadow had been destroyed. She should feel relieved. She should feel free. But as she stared at her reflection, something nagged at her. A thought that didn't quite feel like her own. She raised her hand to touch the mirror, and her reflection moved a split second too late. Just a fraction of delay, almost imperceptible. Her reflection smiled. Nora tried to stop smiling. She couldn't. Her reflection's smile widened, showing teeth that were just slightly too pointed, and when it spoke, the voice came from behind Nora, not from the mirror. "Did you really think the words would save you?" it whispered in her ear. "The binding didn't trap me with you, Nora. It trapped you with me. And now that it's broken, there's nothing keeping me on the other side anymore." Nora spun around. The room was empty, but when she looked back at the mirror, her reflection remained facing forward, still smiling, its eyes completely black. It pressed its hand against the glass from the inside. The mirror rippled like water. Fingers began to push through. Nora ran for the door. It opened easily this time, and she burst into the hallway. Every door stood open. Every room was empty, except for mirrors. And in every mirror, she saw herself. All of them smiling. All of them pressing their hands against the glass. She ran down the stairs toward the lobby. Constance stood behind the desk, that same severe expression on her face. But her eyes were kind now, almost pitying. "Leaving so soon?" Constance asked. "Most guests stay at least a week after their transformation." "Transformation?" Nora's voice cracked. "The lodge serves a very specific purpose, dear. We help people shed the things that haunt them. You wanted to be free of what followed you from Briarwood, and now you are. The question is, what did you become in the process of becoming free?" Nora looked down at her hands. They looked normal. They felt normal. But when she held them up to the light, she could see something dark, moving just beneath her skin, swimming, circling. "No," she whispered. "No, I killed it. I felt it die." "You killed its form," Constance said gently. "But you spoke the binding words while touching it. while your blood mixed with its essence. Did you think that wouldn't have consequences? The front door of the lodge stood just 20 feet away. Nora could see her car in the parking lot beyond it. She could leave. She could get in her car and drive away from this place and never look back. But the thing moving under her skin was spreading. She could feel it now, not a separate entity anymore. Part of her, woven into her cells, growing stronger with every beat of her heart. "What am I?" Nora asked. Constance's expression didn't change. "That depends on what you choose to do next. Some of our guests learn to control it, to use what they've become. Others," she gestured to the mirrors lining the lobby walls, "others prefer to stay here, where we can help them manage it." In every mirror, Nora saw herself, but each reflection was slightly different. One had eyes that were pure black. Another had skin that seemed to ripple and shift. A third had a smile that showed too many teeth. All of them were her. All of them were something else. "How long?" Nora asked. "How long until I'm not me anymore?" "That's the wrong question," Constance said. "You're already not who you were when you checked in. The real question is whether you can accept what you've become." Nora's hands began to shake. The thing under her skin was pushing outward now, testing the boundaries. She looked at the front door again. Freedom. The normal world. But she wasn't normal anymore. She'd never be normal again. And deep down, in a place that scared her more than anything that had happened in the last 4 days, she realized she didn't want to be. She'd been prey for 17 years, running, hiding, afraid. But now the thing that had hunted her was dead, and what had taken its place was something new, something that had her memories, her thoughts, her voice, but also had the hunger she'd felt in that creature, the strength, the ability to exist in shadows and slip through cracks in the world. "If I leave," Nora said slowly, "what happens?" Constance smiled for the first time. Then you discover what you're capable of. We've had guests who became quite remarkable, protective even, using what they are to hunt the things that prey on others. Of course, we've also had guests who went the other direction, who fed the hunger until there was nothing human left. And if I stay, then you remain here in room 4, where we can help you manage the transformation, where you're safe, where everyone else is safe from you. Nora looked at her reflection in the lobby mirror one more time. The thing beneath her skin had settled, as if it was waiting for her decision. Her reflection's eyes flickered from brown to black and back again. She thought about Jess and Marcus and Lily from the camping trip, about Sarah, her college roommate, about her parents in Briarwood, who still thought she'd just been having nightmares all those years ago, about every person she'd distanced herself from because she'd been afraid the thing inside her would hurt them. But the thing inside her wasn't just inside anymore. It was her now. The question was what kind of monster she wanted to become. Nora walked toward the front door. Constance didn't try to stop her. As she reached for the handle, the manager spoke one last time. "Your room will always be here if you change your mind. We never stop accepting reservations." Nora pulled the door open and stepped out into the morning sun. The light burned her eyes more than it should have, and she had to resist the urge to retreat back into the shadows of the lobby. Her car sat in the parking lot, exactly where she'd left it 4 days ago,